everyone. Welcome. And just to shake things up today, as opposed to where are you from, how about having a go at that one? And you might want to write your thoughts in the chat. Really excited about this session. We've had over 170 registered for it from all over the globe. So I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. And as we're addressing that question, we'll just wait for people to come in. So, gosh, we really have got a global audience. This is brilliant. Lovely. And which competence is your growth edge? Curious to find out. I know for me, sometimes personally, competency 8, bringing things to a close. And sometimes it really feels like we need longer to really go deep into the actions, accountability. They're learning about themselves from the session. Lovely to see so many friendly faces and new ones as well. Wonderful. So I'm going to share just a few slides. Keep writing in the chat. I'll keep letting people in because the doorbell's still going. And today we're very lucky to have with us Pete, who I'll introduce in a moment, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives at ICF Global. And before we do that, I was asked on the last call, will you share a bit more about your community? And so, in brief, we're global faculty we've got 12 MCCs in the faculty, which is fantastic, and we all deliver on the different programs, but we still keep our hand in coaching and supervising, and of course, mentor coaching. We work for organizations globally across sectors, and we've won numerous awards. So thank you, ICF and EMCC, for the recognition for our work as well. And we do the ICF levels 1, level 2, level 3, a number of CCE programs, the team coaching program. And if you want more information, our shop page is there with our different training programs on, and we also do bespoke training programs, leader as coach and others for organizations as well. And we've got some programs coming up globally. Italy's always on the go with our faculty member Morella. We'll be the day before ICF Converge delivering on supervision, partnering with Damien Goldfard. And we're in Illinois delivering our supervision professional certificate in November. Spain's on the horizon, as is Canada for supervision next year, and also KSA, Saudi Arabia. And the slide won't go on. So the slide won't go on. Maybe it's a sign. I'll just stop there and I'll introduce our visitor. And so we have with us Pete, who was from the UK originally. He's been in the States for over 20 years now. He's an experienced association manager specializing in certification and accreditation. And he's also certified by the Institute of Credentialing Excellence. Pete, without further ado, really appreciate your time. This topic is so hot off the press with the competencies coming out next week. I give you a heads up of a few things that our community and our WhatsApp were having discussions on this week, and we look forward to your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Claire. I'm going to set my slides going. You'll just have to make sure that you can see them. Are they working?
Perfect.
Excellent. All right. So, um, yes, we're talking about the ICF 2025 core competency updates today. Who knew the change of a single word or a phrase could cause so much interest? But we found that out this time. So let's get on. I'm going to do a brief overview of the process, the and then go into the changes a little bit, and then we'll talk about a couple of items that Dr. Claire's highlighted as community interest areas, and then we'll do some question and answers at the end. I'll try and get through the slides as quick as I can. I suspect most people on the call have seen the updates and sort of are aware of the overall, and then we'll get into the details with the question and answer session. So, oh look, there I am. That's me. I'm Pete Etchells. I'm Director of Strategic Initiatives, as Claire mentioned. I've been with ICF for the last 3 years or so, and I'm sure many of you are aware I've been making a lot of, I'm going to go ahead and say improvements to the ICF certification programs, and in particular the exams. I am responsible for, or in part responsible, I should say, along with the rest of the team in credentials and standards for uh, making sure that the certification program runs well, that the exam runs well, that it's testing what it's meant to be testing, and that it gets developed over time. So that's my role, and my email address is there. Happy to, if anyone has any questions that go outside the scope of this meeting, or even within the scope of this meeting but don't get a chance to address them during the next hour, happy to answer questions. Please take down that email address if you have any need to contact me. So start at the beginning. So the core competency updates. Why now? What's the purpose? Why do they need updating? So with any professional core competencies or any professional certification programs for that matter, it's required that the authority or the organization that is looking to test those skills, make sure those skills are up to date, keeps track of what's happening in the profession. Professions change over time, new things come in, old things go out, technology, philosophy, ways of thinking, different techniques, and so forth. And so, for most organizations that are looking to do that, and definitely for most certification programs or organizations with a certification, a job analysis is the tool that is used, or the research methodology. It is a structured process used to understand the task, skills, and knowledge required for effective coaching. So what we did for that was we take a number of different research tracks, put them all together, and at the end come up with what is and isn't being done within the profession. So over the course of the last, well, going back about 18 months to April 2024, we conducted literature reviews. We had a number of small focus groups. We did a very large global survey that reached nearly 3,000 coaches. And we had 2 workshops. We had one workshop before the survey went out, making sure that the survey was asking the right questions and made sense from a coach point of view. And then a second workshop after the results of the survey came in to help us assess those results from the survey and interpret them and understand what they meant. So that was a year's worth of work. Obviously, the majority of that nearly 3,000 coaches were involved in the survey, but we did have large numbers of SMEs working directly, or more directly, I should say, rather than just filling in a survey, in the workshops and the focus groups and the literature review. And I think this doesn't get mentioned enough, or sometimes gets glossed over. We ensured that um, that representation, those various subject matter experts, came from all over the globe, different ages, genders, regions of the world were represented there, different coaching backgrounds, and different coaching levels, all represented within that. So this wasn't ICF asking a few of our best mates what they thought. This was a truly representative survey and process that encompassed as many people as we could get in touch with. So I think I jumped ahead of myself. So this again, participants came from our membership and credential database, but also outside of that area. So we did make efforts to reach coaches who practicing coaching, but maybe not part of the ICF ecosystem, either as members or credentialed. The 2019 core competencies and associated tasks and KSAOs, so that means knowledge, skills, abilities, other characteristics, served as the beginning, the baseline for the analysis. So we started there and looked at what had changed. Data was analyzed statistically and reviewed through thematic analysis. And as mentioned there, April to April last year to this year. So what was the outcome? So just as a statistical, we were expecting, so the 2019 core competency updates and the job analysis, the related job analysis that we done then was a major, for anyone who was around ICF back in 2019, may remember, it was a big overhaul. The changes were pretty big. There was new, I think we went from 11 core competencies down to 8. There was a lot of other changes in there, and it involved an overhaul for both ICF and anyone using ICF core competencies. So coach education, the exams and certification program. When we started out this time, we felt that 2019 overhaul, one of the reasons for that 2019 overhaul was it had been a little while since the previous job analysis had occurred. So a lot had changed, and coaching is a young industry. So a bit of extended time, a lot of changes between the previous one and 2019. Certification and professional best practice suggests that job analysis for organizations like ours or any other organization looking at professional, the state of a profession, tend to recommend that job analysis need to be done every 5 to 7 years. So 2019 to 2025 is right slap bang in the middle of that, 6 years. And the reason is because when you do introduce these updates, you don't want it to be an overall every time. You don't want people kind of completely throwing out the old model and bringing in a completely new model. It should be kind of an evolution. A few things have tweaked, a few things have changed. Because we were doing this within a reasonable time frame and had a sense of, what's going on generally within the industry, we didn't expect there to be huge changes. And that seems to be what's come out of the results. As you can see here, 51 of the core competency sub-competencies, so 51 remained unchanged, didn't get changed at all. 12 were modified, and keep in mind some of those modifications were a word or a descriptor or something else. So the modifications generally pretty minor. I know there's a couple of exceptions, but generally pretty minor. And 5 new ones were added. So overall, this was, where you'd expect sort of a regular core competency update to be. A few tweaks, few nudges, few changes. So again, no new main competencies, 5 new sub-competencies, 12 existing sub-competencies were revised, clarity, inclusivity, 1 expanded definition, and an overall emphasis on technology, cultural awareness, emotional regulation, a few other bits and pieces in there, but we'll get to those as we get to the core competencies themselves and look at those. So before we get into the core competencies and the specific changes, we'll go over a few of the sort of what this affects. So for credentialing and training. So for credentialing first, for ICF certifications, ACC, PCC, and MCC, ACTC has its own core competencies, so that'll be dealt with separately. The updated competencies will begin to be reflected in ICF credentialing exams starting later next year. So we've already started the work for those updates. But, and I think most people probably don't know this, updating certification exams, if you're doing it correctly, properly, following best practice, isn't an overnight process. It is a long-winded, month-long process. And that's important because it makes sure we have the right people looking at the different items and the different ways the exams are changing over a period of time. There's a number of different activities that go into those. And then for ICF, what also adds a little bit to that time frame is we translate our exams into 15 languages other than English. So we start in English, then we have to do the translations at the end, making sure that the translations are accurate, correct, and fair. Also takes a little bit of time. So that work has begun, but it takes a little bit of time for those to be reflected. So generally speaking, the credentialing exam, which is for the PCC and MCC qualifications, will be probably sometime around September, this time next year. ACC, we will be starting that in January, and that will probably be in very end of 2026, maybe into 2027. The other thing I should make very clear on changes to the exam is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, these were tweaks, minor changes, not major overhaul stuff. So the changes to the exam are going to reflect that. It's not going to be we're throwing out the whole of the old exam and we're bringing in a whole load of new, completely different questions on completely different content areas and types. If you have trained for the 2019 version of the core competencies exam, if all of a sudden we slip the 2025 core competency exam version in, it should not have a huge effect. There may be the odd question here or there that's tweaked slightly, but it shouldn't have a huge effect on the difference. I know people get very anxious when exams are changing. They worry about, well, what don't I know? What of the certification organization sneaked in here that I'm not aware of? And the truth of the matter is it's going to be pretty minor generally. There are some other changes to the exams coming up, but not in content, and I'll talk about those in a moment. To get ready for these new exams, we always have to run a pilot because we have to know how it works in comparison to the previous version of the exam, make sure the fairness is about right. So if you take an old exam or you take the new exam, you're still being tested to the same level. There's not all of a sudden a much higher bar that you have to pass or a much lower bar that you have to pass. So we are coming up to doing the pilot ICF credentialing exam in November. So we're already there with the pilot exam. What that means for candidates is if you're through the performance evaluation element of the credential at PCC or MCC level, and you are set to take an exam between November and approximately probably March, maybe April, you will be given the option to take a pilot exam that is based on the new 2025 competencies. As mentioned, the content itself is not significantly different. However, the pilot exam will incorporate some knowledge-based items as well as the subject as the situational judgment items. So the long paragraph long situations with picking the best and worst option to take will be about half of the exam content. The other half of the exam will be your more, A, B, C, or D is the correct answer. What color is the sky? One of the options will be blue. Blue will be the correct answer. Obviously, it'll be a coaching related question, not what color is the sky, but those type of questions, knowledge based, for half of the exam, similar to the ACTC exam format. So there's a couple of other incentives for candidates debating whether to take the pilot or the current exam. Candidates that take the pilot will have, it will be voluntary, they'll be able to pick, but candidates that take the pilot, if they do not pass the pilot, will be allowed one free retake of the regular certification, the credentialing exam. There are also some CCE credit courses that will be shared with those candidates that take the pilot as a thank you goodwill gesture. As mentioned, that pilot is completely voluntary and all candidates will have the choice. So if they've already prepared, if you've already prepared for the current credentialing exam, you can take that if that feels more comfortable for you. And again, that pilot will run November through roughly March. Candidates taking the pilot will have to wait for their results though. They will have to wait until the pilot is completely run, and then we'll get their results probably in April. Depends how quickly we get through the number of administrations to do the statistical testing. So that's the pilot exam. ACC will also have a pilot exam, but that will be later into 2026. For credential holders, so if you already have the ACC, the PCC, or the MCC, there are no updated requirements for recertification or renewal, although current holders are advised or encouraged to look at the new core competencies and see where those changes might be in their current thinking and their current ways of working. For coaching education providers, obviously their curriculums need to match to the updated core competencies, and Coach Education, the department, has set that to be that those going to be aligned by the time of their next accreditation renewal. So if you've just gone through your accreditation renewal, you've got a little bit of time. If your accreditation renewal is coming up, you will be expected to have those programs aligned. Some other resources and next steps. Hopefully everyone here, the glossary is part of the core competency update document. So obviously scroll down to the bottom for the glossary. That is new this year and hopefully a helpful addition. There is also a comparison chart available. That comparison chart puts the 2019 and the 2025 side by side and shows exactly where the updates have been made. A good tool if you're looking to sort of compare and contrast. There is currently a series on all of the core competencies based on the 2019 version of the updates. We are updating that, and we're hoping that video series should be ready late October, early November is the last date I've heard. And so obviously that'll be a nice addition. A lot of people use that video series to get familiar with the core competencies. The update is coming, and it's going to be probably in a month or two. Translations are already underway in French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish. Those should be available next month. Other languages are being completed, and those will come online as and when they are ready. We're hoping to have the vast majority, at least in the languages that we provide the ICF exams in, by the end of the year. And then usually we get some additional ones as well on top of that. A lot of that work, or some of that work, is going to be done by ICF chapters. So it's a joint work between global and chapters. And depending on resources available, those will come online as they come through. And again, coaches are encouraged to review updates, reflect on practice, and engage in continued education. I'll leave that screen up there for a minute. Those are where online you can find some of those resources. Hopefully, hopefully you've already found most of the core competency information. And there's also a blog post about the credentialing exam pilot that's coming up at the bottom there. Okay, so the actual changes themselves, we're going to get into a little bit of detail. We'll go through each of the core competencies as a whole, and then we'll talk about a couple of specific core sub-competencies. So demonstrates ethical practice, no substantial change. I think we added ICF to before ICF core competencies. I think that was the one change in there. So not a significant change in competency 1. Competency 2 had some bigger changes as it went overall. This area underwent the most substantial updates. The definition was revised to highlight the role of coaching supervision and mentor coaching in ongoing development, as well as the importance of maintaining emotional, physical, and mental well-being before, during, and after sessions. So one of the things that did come up quite a lot was the last version of the core competencies focused largely on the session, and the bits leading up to the session, the bits after the session, between the sessions, wasn't as focused on. And a lot of feedback we got during the job task analysis was that this was a major part of coaches' work, not just the session itself, but preparing, being ready, having themselves ready, and being able to perform. So those elements were incorporated. 4 new sub-competencies were added to emphasize continuous learning, openness, curiosity, awareness of how coaches' thoughts and behaviors influence others. And collectively, these changes elevate the expectation that coaches actively care for their own growth, resilience, and presence while remaining attuned to other advances and the client. I should say in there as well. Establishes and maintains agreements. The revisions here strengthened the contracting process. Coaches are now expected to clearly describe their coaching philosophy and defining what coaching is and is not for potential clients and stakeholders. I did hear an argument on a podcast the other day about the new core competencies, saying that coaches should have, coaching philosophy shouldn't vary a whole lot, which was an interesting take. But one thing I would mention is that, and maybe it's the definition of philosophy there that's the concern, or something along those lines. But ICF is an international organization. We focus on coaches from around the globe, and even just culturally, coaches are going to have slightly different ways of seeing things, slightly different ways of doing things. There are a lot of things that go into that philosophy. So hopefully that is what is interpreted from that update, I think, rather than being a major deviation from the idea of what coaching is. Language is added to ensure that ending a coaching relationship prioritizes the client's experience. A new sub-competency emphasizes the importance of revisiting agreements over the course of the engagement to ensure continued alignment with the client's needs. So again, going back to that idea of the last core competencies didn't take into account the process over time, or the things that happen between coaching sessions. It was very focused on an individual coaching session, or at least was worded that way. So some of these updates have been incorporated to address that, the broader scheme of the coaching process. Cultivates trust and safety remained unchanged. Maintains presence. Updates reinforce the active quality of coaching presence. New sub-competency emphasizes awareness of what is emerging for both coach and client in the present moment. Together with existing elements, these updates strengthen the portrayal of presence as grounded curiosity and flexible responsiveness. Listens actively, again, another one with no substantive revisions. Evokes awareness, and I'm aware there may be the odd word change in here that caused some questions, but this competency was revised to further clarify the coach's role. 711 was updated to shift from sharing insights to offering observations, knowledge, and feelings in a way that may help clients generate their own insights. I'm sure there's going to be some questions on this, so I won't dwell there. And the adjustment reinforces the client's central role in meaning making and self-discovery. And 8 facilitates client growth. The final competency was expanded to reflect continuity across sessions. Again, that theme. A new subcompetency 8.7 emphasized partnering with the client to sustain learning and progress throughout the engagement. In addition, closure was reframed to focus on partnering with the client to close sessions in a way that honors progress and autonomy. These changes strengthen the focus on accountability and long-term growth beyond individual sessions. Now, this change here, I do want to highlight it because there is a very specific reason for this. And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to just pull that up there because I want to go into the specifics. Actually, was it? So that new one was partners with the client to integrate learning and sustain progress through the coaching engagement. So that was one that was very strongly felt. And I know there'll be some questions about this later. So in fact, first slide, next one, key discussion topics. So that's a broad overview of the a kind of a summary level of what changed at each. Claire helpfully gave me a few areas that were of interest to the group. And so those are the next slide here. So I guess at this stage, this would be if there's questions coming through on the chat, or if we want to talk about these individual items. But the first one I had up, Claire, was the integration one. So you mentioned that as a highlight for the group. Is there anything in particular there that you wanted to ask about?
So just before that, Pete, there's a few sort of admin things in the chat. Will the
Excellent.
slides be shared?
Yeah, we can slide them.
Okay,
Slide
so
them, share them. Sorry.
let's slide them. That might be nice.
We
Slide
can
them
slide
across.
them right over.
So we'll send it to everyone who's been on the call. We can do that in our thank you email.
Of course.
The integration one, it's come up a few times in terms of transition planning and moving things forwards and linking this sort of overarching coaching project together. So that was one thing that came out in our WhatsApp group.
I'm
So
sorry.
I think we like this one.
Okay. Oh, it was just you liked it. Okay, that's great. Well, I'm glad we have some. Obviously we've had some feedback and hearing the ones that people are happy about. And then I think the ones that we've heard alternative viewpoints on, I think it's kind of interpretation and understanding, I think, rather than sort of disagreeing. But I'm glad this one's appreciated. Yeah, integration, I think, was mentioned a couple of other places in the previous. And I think it's in 8.1 works with the client to integrate new awareness, insight, or learning. But this one is sort of over the whole coaching engagement. So again, as I mentioned, that theme of the longer term, the whole process, both for the client in terms of what they get out, not just of an individual coaching session, but the coaching process, but also for the coach themselves and how they prepare themselves, how they make themselves ready, how they're at their best for the client. Again, not just in one-off individual coaching sessions, but across the process, because that's what's really going to get effectiveness and success. And that's the overall goal of the coaching process. This is what we heard back from the job analysis and from the various research that we did. So I'm glad that one was appreciated. We're going to keep moving then, because I'm sure there's other questions on other elements. So the other one was coaching supervisors. I think maybe I'm going to assume this was also appreciated, or or was there questions on here too?
This one was also, we're really into supervision in our community. So this one was very much appreciated as well, having supervision in there explicitly.
So yeah, so the ICF obviously has I'm not going to say pushed, but it kind of emphasized coaching supervision and mentor coaching. There are elements of both of those within the certification process and expectations, or at least suggestions, depending on where you are and which particular one. Mentor coaching is required for some elements. So obviously including it in the core competencies felt it would make sense for ICF to do that, and was feedback from the research that we did. Now, I think number 3, I'm going to assume everyone likes this one too and is delighted that it's in there. Am I right?
I think there's
Maybe the
differences
silence
of
means there's
opinions.
mixed opinions. Okay, mixed opinions. Okay. So I've already been on a few calls with various stakeholder groups. Maybe some of this group was on some of them, and there's some very strong opinions on knowledge. And I think those come from a couple of different places. The first place is that for a long time, and again, I'll go back to a point I made earlier, coaching is a relatively new profession. It hasn't been defined for very long. I think the idea of coaching has been around obviously for a long time. I think that the practice of coaching, but as a defined profession, it's relatively new. And in the beginning, one of the difficulties coaching as a profession had was defining itself against other professions. In particular, as relates to knowledge, in particular, we're not consultants, not consultants. And some of the issues with introducing the word knowledge in subcompetency 711 is that all of a sudden, if you grew up with that, you grew up with that idea, we are not imparting knowledge. We are not dictating to our clients what they should be doing. The coaching process is a process where we help the clients provide answers for them, so like work out their answers for themselves. I can see that adding the word knowledge looks very much like a contradiction to that. Very much contradiction. And I think some of the stronger feelings against this one word come from there, and that's fair. That's an understandable reaction. However, what I would say is there's a couple of different things that came up. Number one, first of all, none of the changes we made to the core competencies were made by one person or made on a couple of people's thoughts about something or differences of opinion. These are all based on the data and workshops and ideas that came up through that year-long process. Now, one of the arguments against that is, well, I wasn't there, so I didn't get a chance to put my voice in. I understand that. And there were people that obviously didn't agree that this should be in, but that's sort of by the by. The job task analysis is designed to get a variety of inputs. The second is that, the coaching profession is maturing, it's evolving, it's expanding. There are a lot of specialty coaches out there right now. There are a lot of coaches using different ways of differentiating themselves and marketing themselves. And you might turn around and say, well, that's just consulting under a different name, or that's not really coaching how I see it, which is fair. But this is where the profession is going, and to do a fair job task analysis, we have to take a survey of where the profession is right now. The last thing I'll say on this, and I understand that both of those previous two arguments, if you don't agree with knowledge being there, and you don't think that's the way coaching is going, those two previous arguments are both invalid because they don't meet the requirements. The third thing I will point out here is that the interpretation of what we mean by knowledge in this particular core competency, in this particular area, does not mean we expect coaches to now be going out and sharing or dictating or imposing their wisdom, knowledge, experience through coaching sessions. We are not experts. So it's not going from you don't share your wisdom or knowledge because that's imposing on the client to, oh, now it's free reign. It's like, this is not the heading of one of the core competencies. This is sub competency 11 of the the seventh core competency. This is small part of the overall. And what is meant by knowledge in this particular instance isn't that I know something and I'm going to share it with you as the client because I know better. Absolutely not. If you're in I know from coaching education or training programs, one of the difficulties they have with new coaches, beginner coaches, baby coaches, whatever you like to call them, is that the natural human inclination is to share wisdom or to impose that, oh, I know this and I'm going to help the client move along quicker. And I know that's kind of part of the training, is to sort of train that out of the process to more open-ended questions and generating insight from the client. What this means here, shares observation, knowledge, and feelings without attachment that have the potential to create new insights for the client, would mean very specific occasions and parts of a coaching process where perhaps the coach has some experience of something that the client otherwise would either struggle to come up with themselves or couldn't come up with themselves. And the key thing here is without attachment. So not telling the client what to do or how to do it. The example would be, I mean, ICF has team coaching certification. So presumably part of being a team coach is having some understanding of how teams might integrate better or work towards a goal better, and maybe has some tools or methodology that helps teams do that. Now, the team themselves, maybe they don't know that, or maybe they haven't had experience of that in the past. So part of being a team coach would be help the client come to that understanding, and that explanation would be offered as part of a possible solution for the client to take or not take. That's the key, without attachment. So that was the intention of adding knowledge in there, is that sometimes there is elements of knowledge that a coach might have that, if offered, may give the client a greater array of options. Now, I understand that is then going to be an art to bring that up within a coaching session without sounding like you know better than the client, or without sounding like you have the answers for the client, which is going to be something that's going to have to be adapted and molded by the coaching profession within this. But I think that is possible, and I don't think that having knowledge here grants coaches a free rein to become consultants or to impose their wisdom on everyone else. So hopefully that explains from ICF's point of view that particular word. I know that having gone through this before, my explanation, I probably don't have the debating skills to cover everyone's fears or worries about this. But hopefully that gives some insight into where we were coming from and where the ideas of this are going. But I think there's about 15 minutes left, so I will try and stop talking for a moment and let everyone have some questions. And Claire, I'm not
Wonderful.
sure how that's going to, if they're going to put them in the chat and then you relay them, or
Yeah, so there's been a lot of different things in the chat. Some are quite specific. For example, what's the difference between competency 3.6 and 3.12? What I'm thinking is things like that. When I share the chat, if you're happy to reply, we can send those specifics in the thank you email. How does that sound?
yeah, I'd be happy to go through those and add those to a chat. Yeah, it would be difficult for me to sort of on the fly explain
Yeah,
that
yeah.
without taking the entirety of the 15 minutes, probably.
So someone's asked for an example of 7.11. So the knowledge
So
bit.
so in the team coaching, for example, and I don't know enough about team coaching or team theory, but I know there is studies out there. There's research into how teams work better or what affects teams. If you're a team coach, presumably you need to have some basic knowledge of some of that theory to be able to practice as a team coach. Being able to spot. So this might not even be, well, obviously shares observation knowledge, but it might come up in the questions that you ask. So it might not be I know this and this might help the team, but it might be in how the coach asks their questions to guide the team towards some elements of finding maybe what's wrong, like if there's discord amongst the team, towards finding that discord or what might be causing the issues. Or it might be a suggestion for how the team might overcome a particular issue or problem if the team's not coming up with those thoughts for themselves. But again, this is when I explain it, it sounds like, oh, this is how you should start out. But this would very much be down the line after a period of getting through various questions and understandings and so forth, and maybe at a point where the coach feels that extra alternative options may be helpful for the client.
May I add to that as well, Pete? I'm thinking of a specific session with a director that I was coaching in the Middle East, and they were acting child to child in terms of transactional analysis. However, they didn't know about transactional analysis. So really light touch, just sharing parent, adult, child. And they're like, oh gosh, look at me. That's what I'm doing. And it wasn't telling them. It's actually, where are you on this? What's the impact of that? And so for me, that's sharing knowledge.
That's a great example, Claire, and thank you. I'm not a coach, in case you hadn't hadn't guessed. So much better example from someone who's been in that situation. But yeah, obviously, in that particular example, it would be unlikely. Most clients probably aren't necessarily going to understand that theoretical um, construct, but it may help them. And again, I'm going to assume, Clay, you didn't start the session saying, hey, here's some theoretical concepts that I think will help you. It was after some different questions and some different probing. And
Yeah.
maybe the client is getting stuck in circles or not seeing the bigger picture for some reason, even after a little bit of open questioning and trying to help them. The other is this will be in the video series. I've seen some of the drafts, but we've got an excellent coach is the interviewee for this overall competency, and talks about how you might ask the client if an insight would help. would that help you in this, would it help you in this situation if I shared a piece of information that may give you extra, and that permission is part of it. I think one of the issues is having that equality between the coach and the client. And if the coach has more knowledge or is perceived to have more knowledge that the client doesn't, it can end up feeling hierarchical where the coach is. So that's always got to be taken into account to make sure this feels like a sharing, not a telling or a imposing. And goes back to that other word we use, co-create. Co-creating, I think, is key as well. So yeah, I think that example is a good one. And I think the key is in how this is implemented. The word itself, I don't think is a problem overall. I think coaches have probably been using knowledge for a long time. Just it was phrased as insights, but insights suggest something slightly different. So.
And Henrietta, would you like to speak out? You've got your hand up.
Yes, and I'm really sorry about this, Peach, because I hear what you're saying about not being a coach, but I'm still really curious as to why the choosing, the making an offering, because the thing is, even with something like Drama Triangle, we tend to offer it, we'll tend to say, do you know about? Whereas this sharing, teachers, well, I'm sure would tell you that in the classroom, they share information with children these days. Many, as a consultant, you share information about the market or whatever it is, but surely the point of coaching is the offering. So I don't know if anyone else in the room has the answer to this, is why that, that sharing the observations, knowledge and feelings has come in, because I really do think, as a mentor who's had to really unpick, I've had some fantastic people to mentor, but I've also had to unpick people who've come into coaching as consultants, and they're dying to share it all. They're dying to tell everybody what they know and what to do. So I'm just really a bit uncomfortable with that wording.
I understand, and if we substituted the word knowledge with the word information, would that make it any different? No, not as far as you're concerned.
No,
Well,
it's that
that
whole
makes me
point of
actually that makes me feel
offering.
better, because we debated on that, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
knowledge was the knowledge was deemed to be more accurate in terms of what we were talking about, but information was also, another option. And like I say, I think it's going to come down to the implementation, and coaching educators, and how, if coaching educators, and I hope this, my personal hope, this is not necessarily ICF's opinion, is that coaching educators continue to focus on persuading students to not impose their knowledge, to not impose their wisdom for the 99.9% of coaching, but that 0.1% where you're going to let a client circle and get stuck rather than share a piece of knowledge that I I think that's where it's key. But I understand, I do understand that reticence or that concern that people have over this, is like, oh, this is the thin, maybe this is the thin end of the wedge type of thinking. I yeah, I feel like I don't see it the same way, and ICF doesn't see it quite the same way. But we understand this is a change, and um, people may see it as a big thing. So I understand, Henrietta, and I wish I was more erudite, that I could explain this in a way that made you feel better. But I think this is just going to be some it'll take a minute to get used to it and understand the implementations and the outcomes from it. But I think if it's implemented and understood in the way we intend, I think it's designed to reflect, you know, what coaching is in 2025. So there's also the fact that, and I don't know your background, Henrietta, if you're a coach or a coaching educator or both, but there is also that theory and practice kind of in any profession, all professions, I would say. There's a bit of a difference between what you learn in the classroom and what you go on to actually practice.
Oh,
This might
I'd
be one of
agree with
those.
that, Pete, completely. Of course, there are times when you notice that a client is struggling without a lack of information. But I certainly remember having it indoctrinated into me when I trained.
Yeah, that's it.
That you always say, "May I share something with you?" Or you contract, you know, do you want pure coaching? Or might you, you know, if your company sent you here on what they think is business coaching, then because of our individual specialisms, they may have chosen us. And in which case we might, you know, there be kind of making an offering. But when you share information with someone, you say, right, here's a piece of information I'm going to share with you. This is this. But the way we as coaches are more likely to do it is to say, well, in my experience, what I found from other clients is that softness of, is this helpful to you? What might change for you in that? What might you do as a result of that? And I'm just sorry that, because I think the subtleties come out of it. So I think it's going to encourage, you know, the odd person out there who doesn't really understand that need for subtlety to actually go slightly down the wrong line. That's my concern. But I can see other people have got their hands up, so I'll shut up now. But thank you, Pete.
I think
Very
also
quick.
with
Sorry.
I think also with that one, if it's really clear the difference between mentoring, consulting, training, coaching, then coaches won't make that mistake. Should we move on, Pete? Because I know there's a lot of other topics as well.
Very quickly, I just wanted to highlight something Henrietta said to one of the other updates on 3.1, which is describing one's coaching philosophy and clearly defines what coaching is and is not for potential clients. And you're talking about clients who maybe came to you for business coaching or leadership coaching or career change coaching. So, well, you know, one of the many different ways coaches market themselves. I feel like those two things go together, and that's why 3.1 got updated, because that's part of that. You know, what you can expect. So not to make the knowledge more important or more emphasized than it already is, but that's an element of it too.
I'm thinking also as coaches, we do skill drills with our clients right there in the moment. Are we sharing a skill? I suppose we are, really. Cindy.
Yeah, I think my main concern here is from the coach educator perspective, and I share all these concerns. To what I'm imagining is we're in a coach training session and we're talking about this competency and we say, here's what it says. Now here's what that doesn't mean. And we end up spending all our time talking about what it doesn't mean. And I think if we could, and I like the idea of let's have some examples. We need to know how to talk about what this does mean, and even more than what it means, what it does offer to the client, what is valuable for the client about what we're saying here. I think if we could have some, you know, a blog or a video or something about here's the value this adds, and here's how we can teach it in a way that isn't just, now don't go and think it means all of this. Yeah.
It's definitely been talked about and worked on at the moment. And I think you can expect some of those things coming out over the next couple of months or so. And the only reason I'm kind of hesitant about talking, like, you know, giving a definitive timeline and stuff is obviously we want to make sure that when we do that, it covers all the bases and doesn't. There's a lot of strong feelings on this, so we don't want to accidentally make it more inflamed by it putting slightly the wrong thing. So I think you can probably expect something along those lines, particularly for coach educators, soon-ish.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think the reason is that those of us that we love ICF, we love the model, we love the guidance, we love the guardrails, we love what it produces, and we believe in the value that it provides for the clients. I'm a little concerned as director of education that when I start talking about this with my instructors, they're going to go, oh, wow, we feel like ICF has betrayed us. And then they're going to couch the way they talk about it. And I don't want to give them a reason to have to say, well, you know, ICF is kind of sliding here. I want to give them language to say, and here's why we did this, and here's what it offers, and here's how we do this well.
I think that's a fair point, and definitely taken on board.
Now, Pete, we're coming up to the time. Are you a hard stop?
I've been working on this for the last 18 months, so I'm delighted to tell someone about it who isn't my long-suffering wife, who is not a coach and is not in the exam development or any of those. So it's exciting to talk about it. So I can stay for a little while longer if people have questions.
So, any more questions out there on anything that's been covered or something else? Well, there's certainly a lot of food for thought. Such a rich session. A number of the technical things in the chat. We've got Monica who wants to ask a question now.
Well, yes, I wanted to ask the question that I asked in the chat, because in the competencies it says that 11 sub-competencies were changed, and now you, Peter, are saying that there are 12. So I don't know what's the new change here. Thank you.
There's 12.
You shared it, there are 12, and in the competencies it says 11. So not, I don't know exactly what's the new one.
Oh, I may have miscounted. I went through the comparison chart yesterday, counted them up and put it in the slide. So maybe maybe it is 11.
Yeah. Sorry, I
If you,
lived in the competencies. I have them here. Just
oh,
to
okay,
check.
maybe there's a typo somewhere. Probably user error is usually.
Okay. Then I'm happy. Then I'm happy. Thank you.
So just to be clear, so we're not going through doing basic addition, which may be beyond me. If you've not seen it, the comparison chart highlights where all the changes are, and you can see them, or they're all highlighted. So hopefully, if to avoid any further confusion or me counting here while people are listening, go to the comparison chart. All the changes are there. And my apologies if I got that wrong.
It's super useful, that chart. Really appreciate that. Linda.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks, Pete, for this really informative and helpful, and everybody's comments in chat as well. I have a question about updates to PCC, ACC, MCC assessor training. How will that happen?
There is some updates to ACC and MCC assessor training coming up next month. The markers are not changing. Those changes are coincidentally coming at the same time. They are based on other feedback based on the assessment. The actual assessment itself, the updates to the core competencies either are outside the scope because not everything is assessed, not every sub-competency is assessed during the performance evaluation, or it's possible to incorporate the changes into the current assessment criteria. But there are, like I say, there are some updates coming to ACC and MCC. The markers are staying the same, but generally speaking, it's going to be incorporated into the current or the updated versions of the assessment. So there's
Okay.
changes coming. They're kind of coincidental. They're not directly related to the updates to the core competencies. The updates in the core competencies will be incorporated into the current assessment criteria.
Okay. All right.
So
Thank
we
you.
all
There'll
need to
be-
get together, Linda. Work
There'll
for
be more
schools.
information on that coming out in October. I don't want to spoil the surprise. So, you know, there's more information coming out on that in October, the specifics and the details and so forth. It's coming for ACC and MCC.
Okay.
So works for schools and mentor coaches and
Great.
assessors.
Great. Thank you. I'll be in touch, Claire. Thanks, Pete.
Any other questions? When is the coach box released?
I think just before, this is a good question. I think it's going to be available for Converge, which is the 23rd of October, maybe a little bit before that. But that was the plan, the last I heard. And that is a super exciting development from ICF. It's a lot of work, but it's really going to help, I think, everyone with an interest in coaching. And hopefully I believe there's plans to update it on a regular scale. I'm not sure what that's, I think maybe every other year or every third year, something like that. So that will be nice to have. That's going to be a great resource.
Brilliant. May.
Oh, yes. Thank you for all the efforts you put in the past few years from Pete and Claire. And I just noticed about the two words. One is integrating, the other one is knowledge. And I just read the new competence yesterday, and I feel knowledge really concerns me a lot because we are teaching, I'm mentoring for some coaches recently, and we always highlight, don't speak too much, and allocate more time for your client. And I noticed Claire just put an example. What do we mean? I mean, what do ICF means? Knowledge is share something like Claire just did. So I would suggest to avoid cause confusion for this new learner or mentors or supervisor of the coaches, could you do this video when you do the training, put more example to demonstrate what do you mean by sharing knowledge? Because in real practice, even we are not saying you can share knowledge. I know a lot of coaches still share a lot of knowledge in their way. And now you put it into the competence with a word clearly. And I concern people will say, hey, ICF say, yes, I can share. And they will share whatever they want to share. So it's a, yes, pro and con, I don't know. But I trust you have your good intention behind. So could you do some more example to let us know what do you really mean by sharing knowledge? That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, May. Probably for the interests of time right now, because we've already been through it a little bit, I'm not going to come up with any more examples right now. But and I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the previous person. Cindy, maybe, I think, was asking about ICF coming out with some sort of document. And I think we'll try and include some examples there. The difficulty with including examples is sometimes people take them literally, like that's what's meant to be. So sometimes examples can have the opposite. It's like they don't take them in the broad, they take them as the specific. So we will work on coming up with some deeper explanation of what this does and doesn't mean. And I think for educators, as I said before, I don't think anything needs to change for you in terms of how you're telling student coaches, don't be imposing, don't be adding, don't, as you say, May, speak less generally. Those initial instincts and coach and training them on that coaching foundation. And really, you know, to again, sort of emphasize, I think 99.9% of the time, that's exactly what's happening. But then the 0.1% of time when observation, knowledge, and feelings are appropriate, and you know, that's a very small part of the overall coaching process, that's when it would be used. But for most people, that means reducing way back on what they otherwise would think. So yeah, we'll have more guidance, I think, in the not too distant future.
Wonderful. Well, there's so many thank yous for your time and all the detail, Pete, in the chat. Really appreciate you coming to our community today. Great that more will be revealed, and you know, tweaks to the NCC and ACC markers, and look forward to hearing all about that and how we as professionals can work with them in service of our clients. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone, for having me. It was a delight to be here, and I think I put my email up at the beginning. Any further questions, I will try and go through the chat and answer any questions that were unanswered in there. Depending on how many there is, it might take me a day or two, but it's been an absolute delight. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you all. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.